Just like to warmly welcome all of you to the BASW Kent Branch event tonight. I'm Erin King. I'm one of the co-chairs of the BASW Kent Branch. And Jo, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so hello everybody, I'm Jo Livingston. I'm the other co-chair of the Kent Branch, and I will talk a little bit at the end about some of the other things that we like to do and how to join us if you wish to.
Okay, thanks, Jo. So we're really excited to hear tonight our speakers who are with us to hear more about the lived experience of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. So, as the flyer said, some words that young people have used is unheard, anxious, solitary, and confused. And that's how they feel about the system to seek asylum in the UK. And so tonight we've been joined by some excellent speakers, which I'm bigging up now, so no pressure. So we have from Young Lives Foundation, we have Jeremy Barr and Anna Withers with us. I hadn't really practiced that, Anna, but I just realised when I said that. And from Social Workers Without Borders, Naomi Jackson as well. So we're really looking forward to hearing what you're going to be talking to us about tonight. The structure of tonight will be that Jeremy, Anna and Naomi will present to you, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions and answers. As a branch, we are very keen to run an annual campaign. It's something that our members said they would like us as a branch to do. And so what we would like to do is base our campaign this year following this event. Basically, our speakers, they're going to challenge us as social workers tonight, I hope, to really consider what we can do about creating some positive change for unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and think about what we can take away from tonight and take into our practice going forward. I think that's all my introductions, but I can't think of anything else. So without further ado, I think I will pass over to our first speakers. So I'll pass to Anna and to Jeremy, who will start tonight's event. So thank you.
Hi, thank you, Erin. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Jeremy is also online and will be involved a little bit later on. I wanted to start just by talking a little bit about the Young Lives Foundation. So the Young Lives Foundation is a children's charity with a head office in Maidstone in Kent. Most of the work we do is across Kent and Medway. We have a number of services and we split them into two branches. So we have the advocacy services, and I lead on those, and they are our commissioned services. So Kent and Medway commission us to provide advocacy. They commission us to provide appropriate adults, accompanying adults for age assessments. We also do a befriending service, and in Medway we do youth participation. The other branch of Young Lives is our youth services, and they are the services that we fundraise to put in place, and they include our Care Leavers mentoring service. We are a slightly bigger charity than we were, but we're still quite small, but I think we do quite a lot. Jeremy is very much part of the Young Lives Foundation family. He arrived, as he will explain, as an unaccompanied minor when he was 14. He's worked with us as a young person, as a care leaver, and he's now one of our young ambassadors and a volunteer at one of our youth groups. So he's very, very much part of Young Lives Foundation. And I'm going to show a bit of a video of Jeremy answering some questions with his mentor, Andy. Now, Andy is Jeremy's care leaving mentor. And I think what strikes me, and I hope will strike you, is how easy their relationship is.
Jeremy, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank you for coming. We know each other reasonably well, and I've got some questions to ask you about your experiences since coming to this country. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask you the first question. Why did you come to the UK? And can you tell me about the journey for you to get here?
Yeah, thank you very much. The reason why I came to the UK is because we have problems in my home country. And then I decided to leave with the help of my mom.
And where's your home country?
Sierra Leone.
Sierra Leone.
Yeah, West Africa.
Yes.
Yes. So the journey started. I spent like 2 to 3 years from Freetown, Sierra Leone to Dover. So I cut across 12 to 13 countries. Cut across 12 to 13 countries to get here. So it took me like 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what age was you then?
Why what?
What age was you?
At that time I was 11 to 12. So
that's when you left Sierra Leone?
When I left Sierra Leone. So I came here, I was 14, 8 months, something like that. 14, 8 months.
Okay.
9 months. Yeah.
And did you leave on your own? Did you leave your home country on your own?
Yeah, I live on my own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that scary?
Was yeah, really scary because
I can imagine. Well, I can't imagine, but it must be incredibly scary.
Yeah, very, very scary because you have to go through many countries. You don't understand the language, you don't understand the culture, and at that young age, it's like
100%.
When I reflect back, I see how dangerous it was.
Yes.
Yeah, I see how dangerous it was. So I moved to Guinea, and then I moved through Mali. I go through Burkina Faso. I go through Niger. I go through Algeria. I go through Morocco. I go through Spain. And from Spain, I go to France. So when I was in France, I came to Calais, hoping to get to the UK. But since I was young, I didn't understand the direction of anything, for example, where the trains is going or where the lorries are going. So I keep on moving from France to another country. For example, from France, took the wrong track, went to Brussels, that is in Belgium, and I caught by the police there. I have to fight back to get back to Calais. And then when I was in Calais again, I take another lorry, went to Switzerland, came back to Calais. From Calais, went to Denmark, and then back to Calais. From Calais, all the way to Sweden, and back to Calais. So all of these countries I have been.
Incredible.
And then to the Netherlands as well. I've been to the Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
In the Netherlands, yeah.
Okay.
I have been to the Netherlands.
And what mode of transport was you using? Was it just lorries or?
Lorries and sometimes high-speed trains.
And high-speed trains.
Most of the migrants use high-speed trains because since they don't stop in some of, like let's say the borders between France and Belgium. If you take a high-speed train, you know that they will stop.
Yeah.
You are already in that country.
Yes.
So therefore, we thought when you are in France, if you take one of these high-speed trains, you might end up in England without being stopped.
Yeah.
But then when I was younger, I didn't know. I don't know the direction. I can't understand the language. Like, for example, the platform, understand all of that.
So was you following other people at this time?
I do follow other people, like
Yeah.
trusting them. But at the end of
Okay.
the day, we find ourselves in another country without knowing.
And how did you educate yourself about how to get about? Was it just word of mouth amongst other migrants?
Word of mouth. There is no direction. There is no phones.
No.
So it's what they say and then you follow. And sometimes you just
Okay.
risk it yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many times was you stopped and sent back to somewhere by the police?
By the police, whenever I go to Switzerland, for example, they didn't send me back, so they put me to child center.
Center, yeah.
Yeah, because they thought they see I was younger.
Yeah.
So therefore, I forced myself out because I want to come to the UK. So I get out and follow another group of people.
Okay.
Like for example, in the camp there is other young men as well. So who will tell you, yeah, I came from Cali as well. So then, I want to go back to Cali, and they will be in the same process, and I follow them, go back to Cali. And
did you ever think, what have I done here? Or I want to go home, or was you solely intent? I've got to get to the UK.
Yeah, I was solely intent. That was my intention.
Determined.
So here it's all about me getting to the UK.
Okay.
I was not thinking about any other thing again.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you finally got here,
yeah,
after was it a couple of years?
Years.
2.5 years on the road, trains. What was your first impressions of the UK?
First impression when I got to Dover, when the police put me out of like the street, I saw the cars were driving on the left, and I nearly went mad. Because I never seen it before, I was like, really? Is this driver all right? And then one of the ladies told me, yeah, that's how we drive. I was like, oh, okay. She said,
what time of year did you get here?
I came here August 2018.
Oh, so at least you had some decent weather. It wasn't in the winter.
No, it was not in the winter. It was in the summer.
And how did you cope with such a new environment and a new culture and a new country?
Yeah, then one of the immigration officer, one of the lady, she works at Dover. She told me, I'm gonna call a lady. She's gonna take you to her home. She's a good woman. She's gonna help you out. She's like your family. I say, all right. But when she took me to her house, and then she has a dog, and everything was strange and everything was new because the language is a problem. I understand a little bit of English, but when you come to the UK, it's totally different to how the people speak. You don't understand.
How did you communicate then?
I use my hands, and she understand a little bit, saying, "Oh, okay." She knew that I don't understand what she's about to say. So she used her hands. She tried to find translator from my own country, but that doesn't help also because.
At this stage, did you feel safe now?
It was safe, yeah, because I'm happy because I get to the UK.
And now you're with this lady, your first placement.
Yeah, my first placement.
Did you feel safe and secure there?
The problem is, I'm not going to say 100% because I don't know her.
Yes.
So I don't trust her. So I was thinking, this lady actually, she worked for the immigration.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
So therefore, in my head, I don't want to tell her things, something that was, she tried to ask me.
Yeah.
I was like, no, she's digging me out.
So the trust wasn't there at the beginning because of everything that you've gone through.
I'm suspicious, because I used to hear the boys saying it also.
Right.
Don't say things to people without you, if you have not got the papers yet. So therefore, I am half 50-50. I trust and I don't trust.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. What were the other challenges when you went into your foster care?
The other challenges is the food and the lifestyle. So therefore, I used to live in Cali and I don't sleep at night. All night I'm going up and down. Take lorries, take trains. And she told me I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, what do you mean 9 o'clock? I don't sleep. I sleep normally at 3 o'clock. She said, not here. My rule is my rule. You sleep at 9 o'clock. And I said, I can't sleep. So we start a little bit of argument, But yeah, later on I understand that she's doing good for me. But before then, I thought it's bad. But it's for her to understand. She failed to understand a little bit that I came from Cali. I have been 2 to 3 years in the street.
Completely
I've
different
done
environment.
different environment. I sleep whenever I want, or I don't
Yeah.
even sleep.
And how long did it take you to make that transition to this new way of life?
Very hard. It takes me like almost a year because it's very difficult for me. Even if I go to bed at 9 o'clock, I don't sleep. I don't sleep. I come out again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she will be like, go in. I'm gonna switch the lights off, you know. Nobody's gonna sit in the living room. So I'm not happy about that.
Yeah.
But it was good. But in my own, the way my experience, it was not good because she didn't get it. She didn't get it. She thought, no, no, no. I'm
Okay.
just being like, you know, being difficult or sometimes.
And you
like
mentioned the
argument.
food.
You mentioned the food. The food is totally, everything is different. Everything about the food is different.
Was there anything you actually liked about the food when you got here?
Normally, I will say, tell her to order fish and chips because she told me that this is our best things that we eat here. But at home, I don't eat because I don't used to it, you know. So normally, she order fish and chips, and then I liked it. So I manage it for some time. Then I get used to some of the food, and then learning from school as well that, oh, actually this food is good because it's vegetables. You don't used to it, but in reality, it's good for your body.
And the relationship with your first foster carer, did that blossom in time? Did the trust grow between the two of you?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
trust keep growing because when I went to school, I had a counselor, something like a mentor at school.
Yeah.
So I was saying more things to this lady than anybody else because I just trusted her. I just feel like she's not part of the family or she's not part of anything.
Yeah.
So then I was open. So she used to message, they used to communicate to each other that Jeremy is like this, he's not like that, he's like this, you know. So
Okay.
things start to get better and better.
And how long was it until you began school?
School takes me like 4 weeks. Yeah.
So if you was
4
in your
weeks.
placement, then 4 weeks later you started
Yeah,
school.
4
That
weeks.
must have been very
Yeah,
difficult.
4 weeks
Yeah.
later.
How was it for you then? First day of school?
Yeah, 4 weeks later I went to school. My first time going to school, I was like surprised because this is proper English school.
Yeah.
There's no black kids there. You know, proper English school.
Okay.
I was like, who is this blonde girl? So I just see this. Everybody is blonde. And I'm like, I feel like I was like, oh, I'm in the middle of nowhere, you know. And then,
Was you made to feel welcome?
yeah, they liked me. Yeah, they do like me, but I'm still like, I'm nervous because they touch me. You know, they want to feel, they want to feel who is this person like?
And how were the teachers?
The teachers? Since I have a counselor, the counselor tried to speak to each of the teachers. What is this person is about?
Yeah.
I think that helped me very much because sometimes we send migrants to schools, but the teachers doesn't know actually what they are like. So they struggle. That's why some doesn't continue. They just go one day and that's it.
So it's very helpful and important that the teachers know your story,
Yeah,
your background, what you've been through,
yeah,
why you're here.
yeah. So then they can help you more, and
Yeah.
then they will understand the way you think.
Have more
So, like
awareness.
you can be the same age with the other kid, but here you are already ahead. This is due to you have to grow up as quick as possible when you are in Cali. When you go through the journey, you have to grow up.
Yeah.
Even if you are younger, you
Yeah.
have to grow up. It's like force.
Yeah.
You have to do like what big people do, even at that young age.
Did you ever feel that your life was ever in danger?
Yeah, very dangerous because
Can you
especially
Can you give us some examples of that?
especially when, for example, when I was in college, the ferry that I took to come to the UK was through a, you know, like the hook, the rope that
That ties the boat up. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to. I took that. I was climbing through that to get to the ferry, and one of our friends died in that water. You know, one of our he fell off and died there. But that was like
shocking.
Our 7-8 attempt. Every day we attempt that water. We attempt, but we don't succeed. And he died there. But still, I keep on doing it again. But in my mind, I know that somebody dies there. So, you know.
And I
This
know
is,
I've detracted away from the school, but while we're on that, I mean, did you encounter any violence amongst the other migrants, or was it quite a close knit community, Bill?
yeah, sometimes there is a lot of violence. The reason is because if we are not from the same country, we can have we we will say that that group of migrants are spoiling our way. Like, for example, if we have decided to attack, let's say when I was in Morocco, we tried to get to Spain. We argue with the other group that they are spoiling us because they are the one who is making the police aware that
So
we're coming.
they're spoiling your plan,
Yeah,
your
our plans and
your
something
escape
like
plan
that.
as such.
So also in Cali, with the Iraqis from Iraq or Afghanistan, we have some class where they say this part is theirs,
I see.
and that part we say is ours. So we don't want them to go to ours.
And would
and we don't
migrants
want.
affiliate to like-minded citizens of their own country? So, like guys from Sierra Leone would stick together, guys
Yeah,
from Ghana,
yeah, like
Chad,
more, yeah.
So
Like
you stick together.
80, 90%, yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Jeremy.
It's like that.
Can I go back to school?
Yeah.
So how was it? And so you mentioned your first day, but as time went on at school, how did you cope with the lessons? The other kids?
I was at school. I was sitting there, understanding nothing. Like for 2 to 3 weeks, I was just sitting there,
Yeah.
knowing nothing. What is going on? This kid is talking and saying, "Oh,
Jeremy, I was just the same.
they want, yeah, they want to talk to me. They want to, but still, I can't because I can't. I have not already processed all of it. It's too much. It's too much.
Yeah.
I don't used to it. Computers in the classroom. When in my school in Africa, there is no windows. Then I can just like that and see all of these things, and I was like, really, what is happening here? Like small kids.
Did you feel like giving up?
Yeah, some points. Some points I was like, I want to go home. I don't want to wake up in the morning, but this lady will force me again in the morning. Like, no, nobody stay at home except you are sick. And I will say, I'm sick. She will say, no, let's go to the doctor if you are sick.
And about looking back now, that was a good thing
Yes, it's a good thing
to get you back to school because
yeah,
without that,
but because we are blind, sometimes for me, all migrants or asylum seekers are blind and are handicapped because they don't see the bigger picture, the reality, except later, like now. If I realize that was how it is, I would not be, but because I came from a different thing,
of course,
totally different thing.
Yeah.
So I used to have teachers after school to help me with English and mathematics.
And did you enjoy the learning?
Yeah, I do. I did. I did enjoy the learning because the teachers always there to help me. They would print instead of explaining. They stand on the board and write and explain. They will photocopy black and white and then give it to me. And then that's how I started learning as quick as possible and then translate in other languages that I understand.
And rolling on through school, did you manage any qualifications?
When I left or when I went to the school?
At the end of the school, and you took exams?
Yes, at the end of I went there year 10.
Yeah.
They just put me here 10. I was like
straight into year 10.
Straight into year 10 without knowing anything, and I'm like, year 10, what is this? They say, yeah, after year 10 you go to year 11, and then year 11 you're gonna take an exam, something like that, for year 12. So then I have a lot of support. I have to say it from my foster carers, from the counselors, from KCC, because they used to send teachers at home as well.
Yeah.
After school, I will go home and there's a teacher there waiting. And I'm like, oh no. And then I'll keep going again. Math and English. And then after 1 year, I became very good. I understand the language as quick as possible. I understand mathematics, science, love geography and sport. And then actually I came out with GCSEs somehow. Magic.
Excellent. Well, a lot of hard work. That's how. A lot of hard work. Well done. And then the asylum process started.
The asylum process.
How do you describe that?
The asylum process is hard because the problem with the asylum is the uncertainty. Yeah, I use that word, uncertainty, because you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes the PAs will also say it. I think it's not good them saying something like that, because they're going to put the young people off.
To increase anxiety.
They increase it. Some of them. I'm not going to say all of them, because they will say that, you know, hey, we don't know the outcome. Hopefully, the Home Office decide, but we don't know the outcome. They might send you back. That type of thing, you're saying something like, you think it's small, but it's then, even if the young person shows that type of, that they're not feeling bad, but inside of them, they are feeling really bad.
Fearful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The inside of them is not real. What you see, the expression outside will not tell what is inside. So
would it be fair to say that you always had that feeling deep inside that might go back?
Yeah.
I might not stay here.
Yeah.
It's very hard to live with day to day.
And then sometimes you say, what's the point of me going to school? And that most of them don't go because of that. They still have inside them, there's no reason for them.
There's no point
doing any other thing. So they decide. Most of them, I have a lot of friends who just decide they don't want to do anything.
Sorry, that did stop rather abruptly. Jeremy, can I pick up with you just where we stopped there? We were talking, you and Andy were talking about the asylum process. And I know that in your case, it was more than 5 years, nearly 6 years before you got your status to remain. And that uncertainty was really difficult to manage, and I wanted to ask you, what would your advice be to other young people in that position, those young people who are waiting for their asylum claim to be heard? What would your advice be?
My advice, thank you. My advice for the young people that have been waiting for so long and don't know what the decision's gonna be, you know, is to speak to their social workers or PAs that can help them, maybe with gym membership, can speak to organizations. For example, I have one gym membership now. I got it from Louis Binks, and Louis Binks is one of YLF. I know him from YLF, for example. So that also helps. Sometimes when you go to the gym or you're doing something, can make you, you know, forget about those other stress and trauma. And also to support them with, let's say, mentorship. I think mentorship will help a lot with most young people who are waiting for the edition, because most of the troubles that happen with, if you can see, if you check the number of people that are having issues, for example, on asylum seekers that who are waiting for their papers, most of the problems are from those who haven't received their papers, because they are stressed at home and they don't have their families here and they are not doing like anything active. So therefore, they are easily involved into violence or to problems like to drugs, you know, all of those things is because they doesn't got the papers, and they think that there's no hope or life for them in the future, since they don't know when they're gonna get it, you know. So what can also advise them is to, because since they have gone through a lot of problems, I know it's hard, but maybe it's to embrace what they have met, to integrations, and to embrace the culture, and then try to just keep themselves busy, like not to be too stressed about the paper issue, knowing that the paper might come out. For example, if you sit for 6 years and then you got the papers later, then at least it will not stop you. You already got something to work on. For example, it's for them to establish themselves and not too much worry about the papers, and to just make sure keep themselves busy, try to go to school or colleges and study, because that will help them. That's not going to help anybody else. It's going to help them, because you are the one who is going to college, and when you get that education, it's going to help you in the future. Doesn't matter what's the outcome of the papers. So I want to tell all migrants or my fellow young people who are coming in not to worry about the paper issue. Let them just, like the happiness they got in France that they're coming to the UK. So when they arrive, let them just try to do their dreams. Let them follow their dreams. For example, if they want to go to school, if some of them want to go to universities, some of them, I know this is all not going to possible while you are waiting for the immigration stations, for example. Most of the things you are not able to do. But I would advise that they should just continue to be positive, involved in sporting activities, and then try to stay positive and hoping for the good, you know.
Thank you. You spoke a little bit in the conversation with Andy about how hard it was to trust people that you felt were part of KCC, part of the immigration system. You were worried that social workers and foster carers were feeding back to the Home Office, and that really had an impact on you building relationships. And I just wanted to, you've talked a little bit about mentors and about the counsellor at school, about how important having independent people who you could build relationships with and talk to openly was for you.
Yes, very, very important, because for the independent, let's say for the school counselors or the mentors, they only talk about, they never talked about something that has to do with, let's say, maybe even if they talk about immigration is 1 to 5%, 95% is based on the young person, is you. So 95% they are talking about what you can do and how you can improve. So that's the difference when you compare them to social workers or PAs. So therefore, that's why for me, the mentors and the school counselors have given me a lot of strength for me to be able to get all the way to this point, still being the same.
Okay, and I suppose the last thing is just to ask you what you want to do next, because you now have your status. You did GCSEs, you went to college, you're a really accomplished sportsman, you won an award, a Care Leavers Award for your determination. So what's next for Jeremy? What would you like to do next?
Next, I want to continue like this, and then to embrace many challenges. For example, I am ready to embrace any challenges that comes my way, and at the end, I want to be a physiotherapist or anything that's a sport-related job. So I hope I will be able to do that. I already have my diploma in sport and physical activities. Hopefully, I will continue like that, and let's see what the future holds, you know.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I think we've had a conversation before, and I've always been, in the short time I've known you, really impressed by the way that you've embraced everything that you experienced and turned it into a strength. And we've talked about your determination, and what is lovely is you're now volunteering at one of our Legends youth groups and enjoying spending time with young people and supporting them. So thank you. Erin, can I hand back to you?
Yes, thank you, Anna, and thank you so much, Jeremy, for sharing your personal story with us tonight. You are an inspiration, you really are. I think, building on what Anna is saying, for you to be the age you were and travelling through all those countries, I mean, I was absolutely gobsmacked when you started listing all those countries. I don't know what other people felt when they were listening to your story. So no, thank you so much for sharing tonight. It's been a privilege to listen to that. So thank you. Now after that, I will now pass to Naomi. If you would like to tell us a little bit more about your role and about what you do as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeremy. It was really, really interesting to hear your perspective, and a bit of a sad indictment of social workers, that these people external to social work and external to the Home Office, and thank goodness you have people like Anna or organisations like this and your counsellor at school to build those relationships of trust. But really sad in some ways that it wasn't your PA and your social worker that were those people. So yeah, maybe what I'm going to present this evening speaks to some of that, because we're here as a social work branch. So thank you for that. So my name's Naomi, and I'm the managing director of this charity, Social Workers Without Borders. I'll just tell you a little bit about who we are as an organisation. So actually, in some ways, like the story of how Social Workers Without Borders started has links to Kent, and some of what I might share is in some ways like critical of maybe some of what has been happening in Kent, but I also want to, before I get going, like recognise that like Social Workers Without Borders would not exist if it wasn't really for social workers in Kent, kind of like the spark of what started happening. So and how we kind of formed as a group, and it isn't intended, it's not critical in that sense. So we started in 2016. There was some social workers who were going to Greece and northern France, but it was really the response to the destruction of the kind of informal refugee camps in Calais, and what was really essentially a safeguarding crisis there for unaccompanied children, and a group of social workers based in Kent, knowing that was, just so close, and feeling like, hang on, we're social workers, and there feels like there's this really big kind of safeguarding need. We have something that we need to do here, or something that we can offer to help. And so then what started happening was people organising themselves in small groups of social workers and going to Calais and doing these best interest assessments, like social work assessments for unaccompanied children as expert evidence to support their application to come to the UK. And then, so that it was really that experience. And that's where we learned that there's such a need for this social work evidence, these independent social work reports. Where we are now, so then in 2017 we registered as a charity, and all of our social work practice is in the British context of immigration and border controls, and even the sort of previous work in Calais was still about applications that were being made to the Home Office. So, but yeah, we just based here, and we have 3 members of paid staff, 18 steering group members, 7 trustees, and approximately 130 volunteer social workers and social work students across the UK. This is how we organise our work. We do direct work. We do these independent social work reports to be used as expert evidence in immigration and asylum proceedings. We campaign and we deliver education as well. This is more the body of my presentation. When Erin and Joe were first planning this, the question that you asked me was about the impact of the Rwanda Act on social work practice with unaccompanied children, which it must have been quite a long time ago, because it was pre the election and pre this Labour government, or sort of thereabouts as these things were happening. And that made me think about, how did we get to the point where we had this Safety of Rwanda Act, and what's the significance of that? And actually some of what has happened in Kent, and Kent is a real sort of epicentre of social work with unaccompanied children. So there's a kind of parallel story of these kind of micro things and macro things, and this bigger legal policy context, and only some of that is really relevant to our social work practice, but a lot of that is really mirrored in what's been happening in Kent over the last few years. So hopefully as I deliver this, it will all make sense of how these 2 parallel stories go together. And then maybe some ideas about what we can change, or some of the shift that's needed. So how did we get there to the Rwanda Act? And it really started with, in 2022 or 2021 or 2020, we had the new plan for immigration, and that was sort of setting out the policy objective, which was really like the sort of narrative of the story was all this kind of moral panic and cry around the small boats and stopping the small boat. And really from its inception, I guess this whole story, and this is what I think is quite interesting for us as social workers, what continuously happens is like the language of safeguarding. Like we must do these things because we have to keep people safe. It's the criminal gangs and it's the people smugglers, and we have to keep people safe. This is our job, right? We as social workers, our remit is to keep people safe and well. What the Home Office or politicians do is they take that language, and then what they've actually done is criminalise people. So at no point has it really been centred in people's safety, because if it was centred in people's safety, it would be about safe routes for people, and a different way of thinking about migration more generally. Anyway, so it started here with this whole thing about we've got to stop the boats. And so they had the Nationality and Borders Act, and this is where they first legislated for this idea of being able to like offshore people's asylum claims. And they created this two-tier system for people taking asylum, claiming asylum. And the idea was that people who arrived on small boats would never be able to really settle in the UK, and that their status here would be continuously renewed, whereas people who came who via a sort of government sanctioned resettlement scheme would be able to access their rights as a refugee and be able to, after a sort of period of like a 5-year period, be able to settle in the UK and then claim citizenship. But anybody arriving by an irregular means would never be able to do that. So it's this like setting up of this two-tier and these kind of parallel systems. And then really what's significant then for us as social workers, I'm not going to read all of it actually. What's significant for us as social workers is within this act some real shifts in the age assessment process, and two big changes were floated. So one was around the introduction, legislating for these scientific methods for assessing age, and then more pertinent to social work was this setting up of the idea of the Home Office having their own social workers to do age assessments for immigration purposes in a sort of parallel age assessment process to what happens in local authorities. And so bringing social work in-house into the Home Office. And then after that, 1 year later, we had the Illegal Migration Act, and that was probably out of frustration on the behalf of the government around, through litigation, kind of some of their plans not coming to fruition. So a key shift then again was this made it a legal duty for the Home Secretary to remove people arriving irregularly. It wasn't just that they would not be able to settle here, it was that they were then compelled, the Home Secretary is compelled to continuously try to remove anybody who arrives via an irregular means. And again, the sort of more significant bit for us as social workers is that the Home Office then, in response to some of the things that we'll get onto later that were started with what was happening in Kent, the Home Office gave itself the power to accommodate unaccompanied children outside of local authority care. So that sort of two-tier system, mirroring, really derogating from our other legal frameworks. So this side, sort of some of the things that had been happening, they then legislated, they just gave themselves the power to make that lawful, that the Home Office is allowed to do that, and that children, unaccompanied children, didn't need to be accommodated by a local authority. So that happened. We had the Safety of Rwanda Act. So again, this was a response to frustrations by the government around, so the actual UK initially had done this deal in 2022 with Rwanda around we'll pay you lots of money and then we'll be able to send people there and you'll process our asylum claims, and that was frustrated in the courts. So then the government's answer was to make a piece of law that declared that Rwanda was safe, and that nobody could then bring any challenges to being removed to Rwanda. So they're like just the really phenomenal move really by the government to just kind of override our judicial process and our relationship with the European Court of Human Rights. We ended up with the Rwanda Act, and then we had our incoming Labour government, and they scrapped the Rwanda Act, mostly probably, which was great. We were all really happy about that. It was unworkable and it was very, very expensive. And like in reality, Rwanda was only ever going to be able to take a very small amount of people. It was just a really, really poor policy idea. So that seemed good. You know, the Labour government got into power and they sort of almost immediately announced that they were scrapping the Safety of Rwanda Act. However, they do have this border security, asylum and immigration bill that they're working on, which in his King's Speech, Keir Starmer said, my government will seek to strengthen the border and make streets safer. A bill will be introduced to modernise the asylum and immigration system, establishing a new border security command and delivering enhanced counter-terror style powers. I can't read that properly because of where the box for other people is, to tackle organised immigration crime. And what they, so far, like kind of what they've briefed in their policy documents are the creation of more immigration offences, more criminalisation of people purely on the basis that they have migrated, that they've crossed borders as asylum seekers by sort of irregular means, real focus on fast track returns and the creation of this border security unit, and this introducing these kind of terror style powers and linking terrorism with asylum. So a really, in some ways it's more of the same. Just a note about age assessment and some of the changes around age assessment. So we spoke a little bit previously about the creation of the National Age Assessment Board. I think that should be a really big alarm bell for us as social workers, the idea of social workers being employed by the Home Office to do age assessments for immigration purposes, not for safeguarding purposes, and that these social workers can override a local authority social work age assessment. I kind of worry about their National Age Assessment Board, and BASW put out this statement urging social workers not to be complicit, not to work for the NAB. And then the other really significant change, it links to things that have been happening in Kent, was so in 2019 Border Force were obliged to refer children's social services to Kent, if it was in Kent, to refer them for an age assessment if there was a kind of marginal error or reason to believe that they looked anywhere under 25 years old. So this margin of error became like really built into the case law and practice. And the Home Office appealed against this case law, and then they changed their own policy and they reverted back to the threshold for border staff is that they just needed to look significantly over 18. So this 25-year margin of error was scrapped essentially. And so what we've seen since then, so then what's happening is border staff are just referring or just dispersing children as adults and not referring to children's services to make that decision. And so what we're seeing is lots and lots more, not that there are more adults claiming to be children, it's that lots more children are being wrongly assessed and dispersed throughout the UK because safeguards to stop that happening have been rolled back. So they're the kind of two key changes. And yeah, why should we be concerned about this? Because the stats tell us that there are lots and lots of children being wrongly assessed as adults and then dispersed across the UK as adults into adult accommodation, sometimes into detention. There's even been children then being prosecuted under these new immigration offences as adults and spending time in prison. So this is why these changes to age assessment processes should really make us all worried. So how does that link to what's happened in Kent in this same time frame? Let's just have a look. So in Kent, there was, so in 2020, about the same time then that this new plan for immigration, there's some really sort of worrying stuff happening in terms of keeping children safe and when they arrive. Kent intake unit and an inspection by, it was by the prisons inspectorate, identified lots and lots of safeguarding concerns. And so in sort of response to that, the Home Office, this is where we then had our first sort of trial run of social workers being employed by the Home Office, and there was a small team of social workers at Kent Intake Unit, and the Home Office issued them statutory guidance about how to do these short form age assessments. And it was really where the Home Office then first started to really co-opt the social work role, and use social work to legitimise things, and that, you know, we can demonstrate that it's safeguarding, we can demonstrate that it's child-centred if we have social workers doing it, but that isn't the case, and that as social workers we really need to resist being co-opted and used kind of as a cover essentially for things. So yes, there was these short form age assessments happening at Kent Intake Unit, and then in 2022 the statutory guidance for these social workers was found to be unlawful, and then that also then coincided with, okay, so if we can't get this, we can't legitimise it with getting social workers to do these short form age assessments, well, we'll just revert back to letting immigration officers make quite arbitrary decisions about age. So there's a real parallel, isn't there, like with what's happening, our idea around like asylum claims and like, oh, we've got too many people, we can't have them here, send them away, send them to Rwanda, offshore, like process it somewhere else. It was kind of actually mirrored at the same time with what was happening in children's social care in Kent. So in August 2020 and then again in June 2021, Kent just stopped taking unaccompanied children into care and said, we can't have them here, we can't assess them, can't care for them. And other local authorities, to their shame, did not step in and accommodate them. And so these children were placed in the care of Border Force, the Home Office, and the Home Office put them into hotels, which then links to the Home Office then legislating to be able to do that. It's this kind of this sort of epicentre of what's happening in Kent kind of also really feeds into this bigger national legal picture. So that was an absolute sort of safeguarding nightmare. Lots of children went missing, some of them were never found. So then it was really through a series of legal cases led by ECPAT UK. They took KCC and the Home Office to court, and the courts concluded that Kent was acting unlawfully and it was a breach of its duties under the Children Act, which is a real parallel to perhaps the breach of our duties under the European Convention on Human Rights or the Refugee Convention. We were also having in these social work breaches of the Children Act. The outcome of that litigation was that KCC has stopped doing that. They can no longer do that, and they do have to accommodate children, all children who arrive here. And hotels have closed. National Transfer Scheme has been strengthened. There's additional resources for Ken, and there's a commitment from the government that they don't intend. They haven't repealed it, but apparently they do not intend to act on the 2023 powers to accommodate children because it's not compatible with the Children Act. I thought this was quite interesting. So then I pulled this off of the KCC website, and there's a kind of like this sort of series of statements and like questions. And I was thinking about, this ongoing rhetoric and, like the ongoing rhetoric from the Labour government, and that we continue to just hear more of the same. So there were things. So there's this question. One of the questions is like, why is KCC providing accommodation and support to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children when there are other children and residents of Kent in need? And I think it's really important to point out that when Kent said we're full twice, we can't take any more unaccompanied children, they didn't stop taking other children into care. And that's never even questioned as like, well, is that legitimate? Like, I don't, the way that they continue to like frame this is like, oh, it's okay because unaccompanied children are funded from a different funding stream, and there's still this kind of divisive narrative of really pitting different groups of children against one another. And I think that and really like legitimizing a sort of parallel system for unaccompanied children. And I think we need to just shift how we talk about things, how we think about things, and just have a new narrative really on migration more generally. Like, migration is something so fundamentally human. We've always done it and we will continue to do it. So what do we want? So thinking about, I just thought, so there were two really positive things. They were both in October last month, and they really speak to this idea of changing the narrative and how we talk about migration, or how we talk about the support that's provided to unaccompanied children, or how we frame things. So this is a quote from Clive Lewis's letter. He led on writing the letter, but it was supported by 25 other MPs from Black and Asian and sort of ethnic minority MPs. And the letter was a result of the History of the Windrush report finally being published. And that report really identified that immigration policy is absolutely underpins and is inherently interwoven with racism in this country, and probably in others. But and that what happened, the scandal, the Windrush scandal, has been, and our immigration policy is underpinned by racist perceptions of who is allowed in and who isn't wanted here in the UK. And I just thought, so this quote from Clive Lewis's letter, so this report reminds us that immigration legislation and its framing cannot be uncoupled from racism and exclusion of people of colour. As the government prepares its border security, asylum and immigration bill, we urge urgent reflection on the role of policy and the narratives that accompany them in enabling environments of racism. Following the shocking events of racist violence this summer, the government has an important opportunity to recognise the conclusions of this report and shift the dial. This means action to acknowledge the links between racism and hostile immigration policies, and a commitment to building a fair and compassionate system that ensures another Windrush scandal cannot happen again. And then in the same month, the Spanish president, he's really going in a different direction to other European countries around their policies and the narratives they're putting around the leadership of their country. So he's really he's talking about the positives of migration, and that he wants to make it easier for people to seek asylum and to get their papers and secure their status in Spain. And that's what we need to be thinking about, and that people who migrate to Spain benefit the community in so many different ways. I don't think his wording's necessarily perfect. Perhaps we Spanish are the children of migration. We will not be the parents of xenophobia, is a nice way of glossing over the history of colonialism, but I guess that is like life, like what for whatever, like we have always migrated and moved, and so it's basically, it doesn't need this narrative, and this rhetoric doesn't need to be as it is, and so for us as social workers, like we probably need to ask ourselves some difficult questions about how we talk about migration, and at what point do children arriving in Kent become Kent's children? Like, surely the minute they get there, why do we have these kind of really separate ideas about who deserves things and who doesn't? The other thing Erin said was like, so what could be some ideas? What could we change? Well, I think, we just need to fully change the narrative, and how be really conscious of the fact that a lot of the ways that but in sort of popular discourse talk about immigration is just racist, and we have to shift that. Anyway, some like more things we could campaign about. So we want to disband the National Age Assessment Board, and social workers, there just shouldn't be social work doing that. We could campaign to legislate for the margin of error and the benefit of the doubt in age assessment to be put on the statute, and just recognise that knowing someone's date of birth is an impossible task. So therefore, the sort of rational and ethical thing to do is to just prioritise keeping people safe and well, and act with this margin of error approach. We could repeal the provisions in the IMA around the Home Office powers, and scrap no recourse to public funds. I put for everybody, but particularly for care leavers, because that makes lots of problems. And it probably relates to some of these resource arguments that are really ingrained and internalised in people. Just something maybe around including and having it as a sort of statutory duty for social workers to resolve children's immigration and nationality needs at the earliest stage, because it's not currently a statutory duty. And that's everything for me, things that we can maybe think about changing. Sorry, it's such a whistle stop. And then just to say, you have these slides and stay in contact with us, and we put some reading and resources and things on here for you. That's me done.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for that. And I just think what a contrast to what you've presented when we're comparing it with what Jeremy has been telling us about. And what really struck me, Naomi, was the fact you were bringing out that sort of who's deserving and who's undeserving, and how that's coming across in terms of policy and everything. And I just think about what happened with Ukrainian migrants coming in, and how that was in some respects seen as deserving, and so it's just raised a lot of things in my head that so thank you so much for that really thought-provoking presentation. We have some time. Anyone's got any questions for Jeremy, Naomi or Anna? Mercy, would you like to come in?
Yes, thank you. And my question is for Jeremy.
All right, I'm listening.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you that when you were having your interactions with either your social worker, your PA or teachers, were there any considerations around your culture? Did people misunderstand you because you did or say something that wasn't like what they expected in England, and how did you manage that?
Thank you. First of all, yes, I think culture is something very important. But as they says, I knew that, for example, when I complain about the food, for example, when I complain about the food, this is how will be like, there's no way, there's no way to, I can't change it, because if you are living with the family, I'm not able to tell the family that now, please, can you guys stop cooking like this type of food? So he was saying, she can't help in terms of telling them what to cook, or you know. So maybe, yeah, that is a cultural. I think that's
And how
another.
did that make you feel? How did that make you feel when you had to abandon yours and then adopt someone else's, and you didn't think you had a voice to say what you wanted to say? How did that make you feel?
Sometimes it's two ways. Sometimes it feels bad, and sometimes it feels. And then when I know, yeah, I feel like sometimes it's bad, but then after 2-3 hours, you feel like there is no way you
Okay.
you don't have the power to change it. So therefore, although you don't like it, but still you cope with it. You see, something like that. You stay with the sadness, or you feel like they haven't talked about that side of things. But then there's no way to change it. You know, it's difficult to push something like that.
Thank you
No problem.
for your honest answer.
Thank you, Mercy. Any other questions to our speakers?
Hi, I just wanted to pick up on the age assessment process that Naomi presented so well in her slides. YLF have just finished a 3-month pilot where we provided advocacy to one of the reception centres for unaccompanied minors. And I have to say that there were 2 really big learning points for us as a charity from that. The first was, at the moment, those young people leave Dover and come to Kent, and they have a 48-hour turnaround before they leave again on the National Transfer Scheme. And Jenny, one of my advocates, and I would go to a community meeting and be faced with a room of up to 80 16 to 17-year-old young men, some of whom had arrived at 11 o'clock the night before, looking like rabbits in a headlight, in clothes that didn't belong to them, hopefully with groups of people they'd travelled with, or they'd been or from their own from their own country. Some of those young men had been there longer because they were waiting for age assessments, and they talked about that's where the stranded came from. They felt completely and utterly abandoned. They felt that they didn't know how long they were going to have to wait for an age assessment. All of them talked quite openly about the impact on their mental health. They weren't sleeping. There were at least 2 who were showing signs of significant self-harm. So the first thing for us was we're working on being a trauma-informed organisation. We'd like to see more practice that is trauma-informed with these young people. They are children, and I think that's sometimes forgotten. I joined YLF in June, and I worked in a big boys secondary school. If I had gone into a year 10 classroom and expected of that group of usually well-adjusted, bright, it was a grammar school, bright boys, and put the amount of pressure on them that was being put on these young men who were seeking asylum and the journeys they'd had, those young men wouldn't have coped, and yet we're expecting huge amounts from our young asylum seekers without the appropriate support, I feel. And moving on just to the age assessment, since the Home Office social workers are involved, social workers from the Home Office will contact Kent, and they will give the names of the young people who they're going to assess, and they may ask for 4 consecutive days of interview for one young person, lasting from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. That young person sits with an interpreter, 2 social workers, and one of our accompanying adults will be with them to make sure that they're treated appropriately. YLF have stood very firm and said that's too much. You cannot put young people through hours and hours of interview. And there has been some success in making, the interviews be spaced out over more time. But the feedback from the young people is that process is traumatic. It is, they're asked to tell their stories over and over again. They feel as though they're trying to be tripped up. They feel that they're not believed in anything they say. And talking to some of the young men that going through that process, and to some of our accompanying adults, it's a draining process, and it's not a child-centred, it's not a trauma-informed process. And I think these are young people, whether they are under 18 or over 18, who have experienced extreme trauma, and I think we need to understand that, and in everybody's practice that needs to be reflected. Thank you.
No, thank you, Anna. And I think that's a real takeaway, isn't it, for all of us here when we're thinking about what we can be doing in our own, as social workers. It's to actually remember that the trauma that the young people have gone through, and then if we're forcing them to go through processes like that, it's re-traumatizing in a different way, isn't it? So yeah. Joe, you've got a question.
Yeah, obviously I'm really struck by the power of those presentations. I think that, they were very telling of, what we've been kind of thinking about, I suppose, as a branch for a while now. We've been kind of talking about issues around asylum seekers, and particularly young asylum seekers in this kind of area, because we have so many in this area. So there's been very specific kind of flare-ups of issues, hasn't there, around it. So I suppose what I'm still left wondering about is how, where is the kind of response from government, from our own local authority, from BASW, whoever, where is the response around the people who are criminally trafficking? And, why are we targeting individual asylum-seeking kind of young people? But there doesn't seem to be very much emphasis on those people who are essentially just trying to make money or move people unlawfully, or kind of enslave people in some way, or, all sorts of things that, we know happen. But it's where is the focus on that? And it's more of a comment, I suppose, than a question exactly. But, it just struck me that it's really notably absent any sense of looking at those other people that are also kind of involved in this, really.
I think that there's two things I just want to quickly pick up on in relation to that. Just that we need to be clear that there's a difference between trafficking and smuggling. So trafficking is moving people around, whether it's across borders or internally. Trafficking is moving people for the purposes of exploiting them. And I actually took it off my slide because I thought it was too much information, but there was a point about, so one of the things under the Illegal Migration Act, I'm sure you do know the difference, but the point is, in relation to victims of trafficking, the government under the Illegal Migration Act stopped people being able to claim asylum if their asylum claim related to having been a victim of trafficking. So and the only reason that they then might be able to stay in the UK is if there's a discretionary reason why they need to stay in order to prosecute traffickers. So that part of it, the government obviously isn't looking to protect people who've been victims of trafficking, and all of this stuff around, not referring people to or accepting a referral to a national referral, the NRM national referral mechanism, as being able to be part of people's asylum claims. So if we cared about victims of trafficking, we wouldn't be doing that. The thing that people need to do, they need to pay somebody because there's no other safe way. So the obvious answer is to make it easier and safer for people to travel. If we care about, that's the most, it's a business, and the best way to stop that business is to give people a choice and an alternative, which again isn't what we're seeing. So it's not just that there's no safe routes, it's that even things like people being able to apply who are now here for family reunion, which is one of our only remaining kind of safe ways that people can travel, is the limitations on that. So I think if we care about trafficking and we care about smuggling and people who are victims of that, then they're the things that we need to be, they're the logical things that we need to be doing. But there is a huge emphasis on counter-terror style powers and enforcement and surveillance and criminalisation. And we've seen a 19-year-old prosecuted under immigration offences because he was touched. He was the only person who was steering the boat, and he's been charged with manslaughter. We just need to really, in that thing about how we switch that narrative in our head and what we see the problem is, that's where we need to decolonize our own minds and really start thinking about what is our relationship with all of this stuff. What is the role of government and immigration policy?
So you've both, sort of Naomi and Anna, you've raised some things that we can start as social workers taking away from today that we can bring into our own practice. I suppose in terms of some of what you've discussed, Naomi, around sort of changing on your last slide, a lot of it, we could be sitting here as social workers thinking, how do we change these big policies, this big legislation? And I suppose my question to all three of you as speakers is, what can we as social workers, some of who could be here today who work with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, what can we be doing in our individual practice to actually make a difference in those children's lives?
I think from my point of view, at the very lowest level, challenge comments, and I've heard them from social workers, from PAs, from support workers. Challenge the negative rhetoric. If someone says, we had one recently, do UAS young people actually need a voice? Well, yes, they do. So I think there's still some kind of within individual practice that we challenge that bias, that we challenge those comments, because I think only by challenging do we make changes. And so I think sometimes it doesn't have to be something big. It just has to be a commitment that every single young person in the UK has the same rights, the same entitlements, and that whether you say it to those young people's faces or whether you say it behind their back, we need to be mindful of that.
Oh, thank you, Anna. Yeah, good point. Naomi and Jeremy, so you've got a floor here with social workers who are here tonight, but also this is being recorded, so there could be other social workers who are going to watch this. What message would you want to give to the social workers here tonight and to anyone who's listening, watching this video in the future?
Okay, I think one of the things I want to say is responding to emergency or automatic calls, or because most social worker, for example, you text them for an issue, and it takes, I don't know whether they're working at that moment or they're not working, but is that just some period that will respond, take you 1 week, 2 weeks without responding to the message, and then some young people get into troubles because they don't have the response, and they will be in danger, for example, and then they will text the social workers or PAs, and then no response. It will take 2-3 days or even a week, and then they will come later, and some will say, for example, oh, I was on holiday or I was on leave, something like that. I think one of the things that is to put something in place that whenever, even if they're not there, there is someone who can see those messages and see what the problem is before you come back and hear, oh, this is what has happened to this person, something like that.
Yeah. No, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you. Naomi, is there anything you would like to add to what you've already sort of said in your slides?
I was just thinking about, Jeremy's point about being consistent and our practice really being embedded with care, and like picking up on what Anna was saying around the need for appropriate adults, and that's really reflective, isn't it, that in some ways there is elements of social work practice that are so punitive and potentially harmful for children that children need other adults there to make that a safer space for them, which I think we really need to then just reflect on that, really, and that whatever we're doing needs to be not just move to a place of like punitive gatekeeping kind of approaches. It really needs to, we need to be caring. And
thank you. And I think you're absolutely right. It is embedding the care into practice, isn't it? And yeah, building on what Jeremy and Anna, you've said as well about challenging that negative rhetoric and making sure that people are there when you need them and not 2 weeks later. So yeah. And I would just like to once again, I hope everyone will join me in just saying a huge thank you to Jeremy, Naomi and Anna for tonight. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's been very thought-provoking, and I mean, I've taken a lot away from tonight, and I think as a branch we will definitely take on board what you've said, and look at how we can sort of change as a branch, maybe sort of get in contact, Naomi and Anna, if there's anything as a branch we can support your charities with as well. Joe, do you want to say anything about our branch? Because I am aware that we may have some people, we have got people from other areas.
I know, yeah. So obviously for those people, they may obviously might not be relevant for everybody. But anybody who lives in Kent, works in Kent, or even nearby, we've had a few enquiries from places like Essex where there is no other branch. Eastbourne I had recently, so we're quite welcoming of anyone in the general area, really, that might like to kind of join us. We usually meet online because of the size of Kent. We try to meet a good 5 to 6 times a year. We also try to have at least 1 or 2 kind of events like this, or other kind of CPD type things, or speakers, and we try and keep it kind of relevant and interesting. We like to just be inclusive, really. So anybody who wants to may email, so they can email us at the branch, which is baswkentgroup@gmail.com, or they can contact BASW and just ask about joining Kent Branch, and they will farm it to us. That's it, really. But I think that was so thought-provoking and so useful, and I think I would really like us as a branch to kind of have ongoing links with these 2 organisations, and see what we can do as a branch to support their work as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.